back to Gray Stem Farm. My name is Trudy, and today I'm doing the first in a series, a small grouping of videos that are at the request of a viewer who requested more information, more detailed information after watching our seed starting video. My husband John and I are the owners of Gray Stem Farm, and we have grown and gardened for fun for many years. We've done vegetable gardens, flower gardens, and landscaping. We also had a few years of market garden experience where we grew vegetables and provided eggs for sale at farmers markets. So we do have some farming experience. I've also read a number of books over the years, and there is a video that I put up with recommendations for some of the books for flower farming and market gardening. So what I'm trying to do in these videos is take all that experience, all that knowledge from books, and condense it down to a few short basic video so that they're in easy to digest form and don't bore you to tears or overwhelm you with a lot of information that you may or may not need. So this very first video is the basics of planning your farm or garden. To do this, there are a few tools you'll need. A computer with a program of your choice. I like to track things in Excel spreadsheets. Graph paper, pens, pencils, eraser, if you like to use that, and a ruler of some kind to measure distance. Something as simple as a 10-foot ruler, or if you have a lot of space like we do, a 300-foot ruler. If you're the only person that's going to be doing this, put a little zip tie or string on the end so that you can loop it over a post or a stake or something in the ground so you can do this without having another person hold it at the other end for you. That's just a little trick that we use. I think that's it. Oh, and a calculator, or if your phone has an app to use a calculator, because you will have to do some math. I'll also post links in the comments section below on this video and other videos to online calculators and resources. For planning gardens, there is a nice program that we have used in the past. It's available at some of the seed companies. I know two are Territorial Seeds and Southern Exposure Seed Exchange. The applications are a subscription fee of I think $29 to $70 depending on which subscription you choose. And you can create, there's a drawing portion to the app where you can create your garden plan and draw out little beds and then plug the seeds or the plants that you want in there. And then as you move the cursor across the bed, it'll populate the bed with the number of seeds or plants you need in that bed. The only drawback to the program is that it's limited to the seeds that each seed company carries. So if you plant from multiple sources like we do, you have to look that information up and log it anyway. So what are the things you need to look for? Oh, let me backtrack a moment. This video is geared towards raised bed, square footage, or in the ground plantings and gardening. So the first thing you have to do is assess your land. What is the exposure? Is it predominantly northern exposure, southern exposure, eastern, western? Each one of those directions has some benefits and some drawbacks. Northern exposure is a consistent light because the sun is moving from east to west and it's always consistent in the north, but it's colder in the north. The southern exposure is similar in respect to the light, but it's hotter. Now that is great if you live in a cold climate, but if you live in a hot climate like ours here in Virginia, it's a little bit of a drawback. Eastern exposure is probably the best exposure for growing. As the sun comes up, it evaporates the early morning dew. It gets the leaves and stuff dry to prevent certain diseases. Western exposure is very hot and dry, and depending on your location, the winds come predominantly from the west. Ours are from the southwest and northwest. We very rarely get eastern winds unless there's a hurricane in the Atlantic and it's moving up and circulating that way. So the best exposure is eastern, followed by southern, and then northern or western are pretty much equal. What is your landscape like? Are you totally flat or are you on the side of a hill? Which direction does your slope face in? If you're on a very steep slope, you have to worry about water runoff and erosion. If you're on flat land, you may have to worry about ponding or being in a low elevation where the water table is high, which means the water sits in the soil and doesn't drain down. Excuse me, I need a drink. For slope areas, you can terrace. You can make your terrace by the use of using raised beds that are built into it. If you're on a slope also, you should make your paths windy so the water doesn't rush straight down. It has to follow a path and breaks it up and slows it down. What are your soils like? Are they heavy clay like we have here? Are they sandy and don't hold any water or nutrients? Is it acidic? Certain plants don't like acidic soil, some do. Blueberries love acidic soil. So that will impact what you can grow or what you have to add to your soil to grow the things you want. Critters. What kind of critters do you have? If you have things like deer and rabbits, you're going to need fencing around your garden area, and that's something to consider. How much money are you going to spend on fencing? With deer, you have to go high as well as around, so that increases the cost. Wind and shade. Do you have a lot of wind in your area? Is there something that you can put up like a fence to block the wind from your plants? Certain things that you want to grow will be affected by wind. You'll either have to stake them or protect them. Shade. Most plants like full sun. Some will tolerate a little bit of shade, very few will tolerate a lot of shade. So where are the trees on your property, and how does the sun, as the sun moves through the sky, how does that create shade? Is it going to end up shading your garden? In the latter part of the day, when it's really hot coming from the setting sun in the western area, you might want a little shade in your garden. In the morning, you don't want to block that sun. You want the moisture to dry off the plants and the plant leaves, and the frost to dissipate and melt. So how much space do you actually have in this area that you want to grow? If you're going to be growing in square beds or even in long beds, you don't want to make it any wider than 2 times your arm's length. You want to be able to reach into the center of the bed from either side of the row or from any side of your square bed. Octagon, the same thing. You want to reach all the way into the center of the bed so that you don't have to step into the bed and compact the soils or risk breaking your plants as you're harvesting. That's generally considered 4 foot. We till our rows for 4 feet, so the soil is broken up in 4 feet widths, but we actually plant either 30 inches or 36 inches. We are still experimenting with that for cut flowers. So you have your rows. You figure out how wide they are and how long they are based on the area that you have. Another thing to consider is that these rows are not going to butt up to each other. What is the space that you're going to leave between the rows? You need room to get in there and harvest. You need room to get in there and weed. When the plants are fully mature, do you want to be brushing up the plants? Because frankly, honestly, bugs are part of the garden. Snakes, maybe. You know, as you're brushing through, you don't want to break your plants. As you're trying to harvest, you don't want to be breaking the plants behind you or knocking your fruits or vegetables off or breaking your flower stems. You want to be able to turn and move when you're weeding in there. Another thing to consider on narrow areas, which is a positive, is you don't have to put as much mulch down or cover with landscape fabric. On the other hand, if you're going to leave wide rows, that allows air circulation and again helps in a humid climate like ours, allows air circulation in to prevent those molds and mildews and algae from growing on the soil surface. But on the other hand, you need to be able to weed those areas. It would be a little more pricey to cover a big distance with mulches or landscape fabric that is not producing anything. So you'd want to be able to mow between the rows, which means at the end of the rows you need to leave a turning radius for your equipment. Another benefit of wide rows is it allows you to get your equipment in there, like your cart. We have a 4-wheeler ATV that has a little dump cart on the back that we can move through, put our flower buckets in. If you have a side-by-side, a tractor, anything that you need to move between the rows for harvesting purposes or weeding purposes. So how many rows are going to fit in that space when you take into account the actual width of the row you're growing in, the space between the rows, and any fencing and turning radiuses you have around the outside? That will all determine the quantity of plants you can plant, the cost of production per square foot. So the way that we do this, and it's very basic, most plants are not planted on feet apart, they're planting distance. Most of them are in inches. So what you need to do is convert the beds from feet to inches. And I will insert a little chart in here showing all this, the math in the program. This is just a sample chart of a simple layout for flower beds. Let's say this area is your house. This is a north arrow, so that's the direction of north. This little squiggly line over here is the direction that the wind comes from. And you have a small property. You have a fence line here. You have a fence line down here. Each square is equal to 1 square foot. and your little garage is over here, and this is your driveway. You have children and pets. You know when you open the door to the back door to the house, they go rushing out, so you don't want to put a bed right in that area. So let's say you have enough room for a 10 by 4 foot bed and two 12 by 4 foot beds. Bed number 1, bed number 2, bed number 3. So how do you know what you can plant in these beds? Bed number 1 is 10 by 4. You multiply that together to get the square foot, which is 40. So to calculate how many plants you can put in each of these beds, you'll multiply 4 by 12 to get 48. That's 4 feet times 12 inches to get 48 inches. And you divide it by the spacing. Let's say the plants you want to space are 9 by 9 inches. You space 9 inches apart. You divide that by 9 and you get 5.33. I round this up to 6 because it's more than one plant, and it's better to plant a little extra in case you don't get enough germination or if something happens as you're starting the seeds. The length of the bed is 10 feet. You multiply it by 12 to get the length in inches, which is 120, and you divide by the spacing to get 13.33. So we're going to round up the 5.33 and the 13.33 to 6 and 14, multiply that together, and you get 84. So you can fit 84 plants on 9-inch spacing in this particular bed. Beds 2 and 3 are a little bit larger because you had a little bit more room. The kids' play area is over. Let's say the kids' play area is over here, so this is as far as you can go. You're allowing 5 feet to the house so you can walk around, bring your groceries into the back door, whatever you need to do. You don't want to cramp things. And you're allowing 3 feet between so that you can mow. And again, this area you left open because the kids are running out, the dog's running out. You don't want to put anything here that they're just going to right through. And you know they're going to go right through. These two beds are 12 by 4 feet. So again, we're going to multiply 12 by 4 to get 48 square feet. And then multiply that by 12 inches to get 576 square inches. And if you really wanted to, you can count it all out. We want the number of plants that we can plant in. So first we take the width and multiply it times 12 to get the inches, and that's 48 inches. We're dividing the 48 inches by the 9-inch spacing, and this number here would vary, and this number here would also vary if you had different plants that were, say, on 7-inch spacing or 10-inch spacing or 12-inch spacing. And that information, the recommended spacing, will be on the back of your seed packet. So we're also going to take the 12-foot length of the bed, multiply it by 12 inches to come up with 144 inches, and divide it by the 9-inch spacing, which will give us 16. So we rounded up the 5.33 to get 6, and we took the 16, multiplied it, and got 96. So we have 2 beds in the 4 by 12 foot spacing. That gives us 192. And then we add the 84 plants from this one. We can plant in just these little beds 276 plants in total on 9-inch spacing. So even the smallest spaces can give you a lot of production, especially if you succession and rotate plant. Now, of course, before you start planting, you have to figure out what you're going to plant. Why are you growing this garden? Are you growing it to feed your family? Are you growing it for fun because you just like certain things in the summer? I love tomatoes. I love BLTs and tomato sandwiches in the summer. I love fresh tomatoes. There's no comparison to the supermarket tomatoes. But I'm not just growing for me. I want to be able to feed my family. I want to be able to make spaghetti sauce and can it and get us through the winter. So that determines what varieties you're going to plant and what you're going to plant and how much of it you're going to plant. Are you growing just for fun? I mean, do you want just a small cutting garden for your own enjoyment and your own use? Are you going for profit? Are you going to expect to sell these things? Are you starting a farm business, either a market garden or cut flowers? If you're growing for your family and you don't already know how much you need to grow, there's calculators out there. Plant grows so many pounds of this product, but you need to know specifically for your family. And what I recommend is that you track your food usage for a period of time, 3 months, 6 months, a year, 18 months. I like a year because that gets you through all the seasons, and you're growing in one season to cover the rest of the seasons. That's traditionally what farmers did, homesteaders did. Ask your customers what they want. What kind of flowers do they want? What kind of food do they want? That's what's going to determine what you grow and how much of it you grow. So that's pretty much it for this video. I'll move on in the next video to the actual starting of seeds and amending of soils. So I hope you found something useful in here. I hope it wasn't too long, and I hope I didn't overwhelm anybody with a lot of information. So thank you for watching, and I hope you come back for the next video. Remember, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you want to follow along with this series and watch other of our videos, hit the subscribe button and the notifications button. Again, thank you for watching, and I hope you come back for the next video.